talk a little bit about post-migration steps that were added in Stat 5.4. Okay, I'm going to go into the Stat 5.4 System Admin Guide. One place to look is under File Server Maintenance, Server-Specific Post-Migration Step Parameters. And this will give you some basics in terms of setting up parameterization or passing values that are server-specific in scripts using Stat. So just as an example, you can see once you get into the File Server tab and then you get into this place where you've got the file name conversion and then the server parameters. This is just some sample data in there that you can look at. And basically what Stats can do is it can pass values that are encrypted to the end user, and it'll gray them out so people can't see them. You can uncheck this if you're an administrator and be able to look at what the values are. Another place to look is under the Stat 5.4 Upgrade Notes, which will give you some more pointers onto where to look in the 5.4 System Admin Guide. Over here you've got, let me see here, unlock this so it follows me around. You've got some of the new security rights will give you a tip-off under Maintenance General Post-Migration Server Parameters Add and Edit. This tells you can set up server-specific parameters like I just showed you, and then user parameters. Enables the user to add a post-migration user parameter within Stat. So obviously there's security around that. And then the ability to edit this post-migration window and execute post-migration window. You can also see in the release notes support for SSH in post-migration steps and customer definable post-migration step parameters. The custom command window on the post-migration steps window can be edited by a user who has appropriate rights to do so. You can see it says post-migration steps will use SSH if the server to which they are connecting has SSH configured, which I believe is SFTP. If the server does not have SSH, then rexec will be invoked on the Unix servers. Well, actually, maybe it will just use the SSH. I'll have to look into that. It also talks about automatic script parameters have been added to post-migration steps for target environment, login, and password for that environment. In addition to the user will be able to configure their own parameters for use in post-migration steps. And that's under maintenance. Hang on a second, it's coming up. Maintenance general post-migration step parameters. This is the big new one for 5.4. And this is where you can see user-specific parameters, server parameters, and predefined parameters that come with Stat. So this is really the big one. This shows you out of the box what comes with Stat and then what you can define via user, server, and parameters. But this user can be accessed under user, post-migration step, user parameters, which was cancel, user, post-migration step, user parameters, right? Same way to get to that thing. And then maintenance general, you can either do it under a generic app or you can do it under PeopleSoft Connect, or I'm sorry, generic, wait, hang on, let me get this right. You can either do it under object types, file servers, pick a server, click other options, server parameters. That's another way to get to it. Let's see, and then in let's see. Here are a handful of examples that I have in my image: 209, 211, 207, 208. So I'll take a look at 211, open up that. You see I've got a Lawson tab, so I did generic app connections here. You can see some sample file types that I used. And I'm going to go into advanced migration path and do a drag and drop just to show you how this kicks off. That's fine, doesn't matter there. Okay, because we migrated a certain object type, which in Lawson was a PWS, that basically kicked off a post-migration step, which is to do a pugum dump load execution. Or there's two different things. There's a pugum load and a pugum dump, and we needed to kick them off for Lawson objects to be migrated. And so here, if I check run, this is going to do the load. You first do a load and then you do a dump. And so this brings up my parameters. So in terms of the server that I'm working with, dev, looks like this initial script didn't do much. It was just a load, whereas the dump, I think, passes parameters. So let me go to the dump. So in this case, I'm going to migrate an interim down to test. And you'll see how, depending on what environment you migrate into, you have different parameters and options. Alright, so it looks like, for whatever reason, I've cleared out some of these parameters for the dump. So I'm looking at a previous screenshot of how it used to be set up. There was environment name and product line, and that was a variable for Lawson. And then there was user parameters of the stat user ID, because they wanted to track that in the log. And then the program name, because they wanted to track that in the log. So what you basically are looking at here is a special command that would allow this to execute their migration command in Lawson. It would it was SCIS law, I believe, is where you would execute this from. And then it would pass the environment name, the product line, which was specific to Lawson, and then it would actually execute this whole thing where it would write to a text file, and the text file was based on the program name, and then it would echo into that starting PGM dump, and then it would pass the stat user ID so that it could track this in the log, and then it would take the actual dump command and it would run it, and then it would end it, and all this would be outputted to the text file. So this is just basically passing parameters that we've set up for users and servers. Alright, so I would start there. I would start looking at the system admin guide, look up the word, do a search for parameter, post-migration step, that kind of stuff. It'll find you most of the info you're looking for. It looks like I wiped out some of the values in that stat image, so I'm kind of bummed. I remember doing that, and it's in a previous image that you don't have right now, so there's nothing really I can do to help you there, but I'm sure that's all I did was look at the admin guides and play around with the system to get it right. I think there's one other thing. Hang on a second. Okay, the other thing I discovered was an email that I had sent out to pre-sales explaining some basic things, so I'll send that to you as well.